Ever since VR started becoming more and more mainstream, something that and I'm sure a lot of anime fans out there have been waiting for a long time is a full VR MMORPG. Just the idea of living out a life, battling monsters, exploring huge sprawling environments, cooking and crafting next to other people is a really cool idea. And now, with the rise of more affordable VR headsets and the release of Zenith, we are one step closer to people finally caring about dot hack.
Zenith, The Last City is a VR MMORPG created by Ramen VR, a small team of around 15 people, and that is seriously impressive. It's not very often that you see crowdfunded MMOs actually release, especially with a relatively small team like that. Now, this isn't actually the first time we've gotten a VR MMO. In 2017, a game called Orbis VR released, a pretty bare bones MMO experience, but it was one of the first of its kind. Now, since release, it has gotten a lot of updates and pulled a sort of Final Fantasy XIV with the relaunch in 2019. This is the version I've played, and it's okay. There are a lot of cool ideas, but a lot of really dated and unintuitive mechanics. The graphics and combat in particular never really grabbed me. I do commend them for having a lot of classes that do play very differently, and there is still a dedicated community to this day. It's just not really my thing. Which brings us to today. Zenith, The Last City is available on pretty much all VR platforms. That includes PSVR, Vive, Valve Index, and surprisingly even Oculus Quest. And the game is crossplay between every platform, meaning there's no fragmenting the community between PC VR and non-PC VR users. Everybody can play together, and I'm really happy about that. If my friends end up getting it and a PC headset, we can still play together. Not that I imagine having players would be a problem. On launch day alone, there were so many players trying to get in that servers were consistently full, and even shut down for a bit because the company's server provider thought it was getting DDoSed. It did make for frustrated players at launch, and you could really tell who's never played an MMO before because this is common for any MMO launch day. I personally saw it as a good sign because it showed a lot of people were interested in playing the game, more than even the developers were expecting. And once you actually got into the game, let me tell you, I honestly had a grin on my face when I first logged in. Like I said, while Orbis was a VR MMO, one of the biggest turnoffs for me was its art style. It was extremely basic, and I think because of that, it lost a lot of sense of scale that good VR should have. The Undercity, the main area you start in, is a really good first impression. There's a lot of verticality, the game teaches you the basics in a way that flows together naturally, and if your sense of curiosity makes you wander off the path the game tells you to go, you're rewarded for that. It's not just a tutorial area, there's things to find, a treasure chest, zip lines, a whole other quest. It's a really solid first impression. So let's talk the main game. At the time of me filming, there's only 2 classes in the game, Blade Master and Essence Mage. The developers have stated that there will be another one called Cyber Ninja somewhat soon, but we still don't know when that is. I will admit, it is a little strange to release with only 2 classes, but the game does kind of make up for it with a pretty cool system called Subclasses. Essentially, no matter what class you end up choosing, you can always change between being a DPS, tank, or a healer. It's a really interesting concept. So let's say you don't like the playstyle of Essence Mage, but you still want to heal. Well, you can do that with your swords as Blade Master. But that does run into another issue with this right now. If you don't like being a swordsman or dual-wielding guns, you kinda don't really have any other options right now. Sure, your abilities change between the subclasses, but the fundamental basics of each class remain the same. And like I said, they are going to add another class soon, but right now it's either these 2 or nothing. For me personally, I like how the classes play. Blade Master and Essence Mage are both very fun, with Blade Master support honestly being my favorite. I like gliding around the battlefield, increasing stagger on enemies, and healing up other players. It's genuinely fun to be a support build. And you know what else is fun? Cooking! There's a really cool cooking system in this game. You have to manually scavenge around for ingredients, cook things in pans, boil milk, and other things. It's a ton of fun to do, and once you make things, you can just force feed it to people. That's always nice. A big mechanic of Zenith is gliding and climbing. Much like every game after Breath of the Wild, you have to have gliding, climbing, and a stamina system, and I really like it. My favorite thing to do in the game by far is just exploring around and climbing into high places, discovering new things. Gliding is a really fun traversal system, until you realize what you look like. The sense of speed you can get from jumping off of a really high platform and descending is so much fun. And even getting to that high platform, climbing around is also a lot of fun. One of my favorite quests was in the forest area, and it involved climbing around the trees, hopping onto these floating islands to turn on switches. I love the movement options the game offers you. And you can tell that they probably didn't really test this 100%. Even in places as early as the starting area, there are numerous places you can just clip out of bounds. It's not even like it's that hard. You just climb over a rock and bam, you're out of bounds. Now, there's not really much you can do out of bounds. Sometimes you can find an enemy or two, but it's not like you can interact with anything where you're actually supposed to be. And I kinda think the developers knew it's not 100% stable, because if you end up falling into the void below, it'll just teleport you back to the closest fast travel point. And bugs like this are going to be a common theme throughout the entire game. It is a pretty buggy experience right now, ranging from minor things like text not displaying properly and getting so much XP that you skip a level, meaning you didn't get the ability you would have gotten in the level you skipped, to even bigger problems like reports of players having their level randomly set to 0. The game can just sometimes crash randomly. Getting kicked for supposed inactivity is a very common problem that I've experienced. There's people that haven't gotten the gear they were supposed to get by linking their Discord to the game, and in that same vein, some of the gear just doesn't exist. Hats aren't in the game yet, and yet they give you a cosmetic for a hat that just doesn't work. Sometimes the server can just decide to not spawn any of the things you need to complete your quest. There's a story to follow, but I could not tell you what happens in it. It's easily skipped over. Endgame, although I haven't gotten close to it, is apparently just not there. You have one world boss and grinding for the best gear in the game. There's no trading system right now, there's only one dungeon, it's in the starting area. There are a ton of problems with Zenith right now. And yet, I still really enjoy it. My expectations for VR MMO are radically different than that of a regular one like Final Fantasy XIV. If a game like that released now with the same content and problems as Zenith, it would probably be critically panned and forgotten pretty quickly. But because VR is such a different medium than normal games, a lot of the problems are forgivable. You can't go in with the same expectations as normal MMOs, and so for being one of the first VR MMOs, I think it's great. There's going to be a lot more added in future updates, and I'm excited to experience it. The way I see it in comparison to other MMOs would be this. Orbis is like the RuneScape of VR MMOs. Zenith is like the EverQuest or Ultima Online of VR MMOs. Not quite as big of a leap forward as WoW, but an important step nonetheless.
So that's Zenith. I'm having and will probably continue to have a lot of fun with it. If you're on the fence about it and think maybe there's not enough content right now, or you're not sure if developers are going to keep their promises of releasing new content soon, then I'd say check back in when the third class releases. If I had to guess, by the time the third class releases, the game should be much more polished and fleshed out by then. There's no harm done in waiting, and the community is pretty welcoming newcomers. And hey, you know what? I'm fine with any VR MMO. As long as it finally makes people care about Dot Hack, please God, you don't understand. I need the new Dot Hack, please, it's my one chance, come on!